Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Megan. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Today we're going to be painting a summer juicy orange. The colors are vibrant and lively, and you really can have and take your own perspective on this. For this composition today, I was inspired by the bright, bold colors and some of the abstract forms that went into this original painting. So we're gonna have some fun. I want you to include your own ideas, and if you wanted to use different colors than I am, absolutely fine. I did include a list of the supplies previously, but if you have any questions about what I'm using today or what you should be using next time, feel free to ask. But we like to keep things nice and easy and light. For the supplies that I have with me today is I'm using acrylic paint. I have primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and I also have black and white to lighten and to add some shaded colors. I also have I call this my big brush. This is for coverage areas. If you wanted to use a bigger brush than this for the large coverage areas, you could. I have a medium-sized brush, which is a kind of a round point. You can use a 3, 4, or 5. If you wanted to use another medium-sized brush, you could too. And then I have a smaller size brush for the point, with a nice fine point for some of the detailed work. So I'm not going to go too detailed today. I'm going to keep it fairly loose and abstract in form. But if you want it to be really particular, maybe paint in some seeds or be really the detail with like the outline of the rind, you could totally do that. I want you to always remind yourself to be flexible during these art classes. Don't go into these classes feel like you have to do a certain thing. One of the best parts of creativity is just being in the moment and letting it come to you along the way. And as we do these classes, I'll remind you to just breathe and to not take each step too seriously, just to be in the moment and not overthink it. That's the best thing, is just to kind of let go of everything and just to be a part of the experience. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. In addition to my brushes and my paints, I have a cup of water to rinse my brushes off, and I have a small plate to mix colors. In addition, if you have a paper towel handy, not a bad thing to have handy. I am painting today on an 11 by 14 canvas station. This is acrylic paper that I'm painting on. I like to put a canvas board behind it for stability, just for consideration. If you're ever switching to, a paper, you can put it on a harder surface. So you can kind of play with what works best for you. I love using the canvas paper or these canvas panels because you can put them easily in a frame. You don't have to buy fancy frames. You can get 11 by 14 frames at any local craft store. So it's a little bit of a tip, something I've really loved transitioning to as an artist over the years. And I always talk about that in my classes. All right, so today's inspiration is going to be really fun. If you wanted to grab a pen or a pencil, you could. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So one of the first things that we'll do is we're going to mix an orange, and we're going to outline where our oranges are, which is going to be really fun. The oranges are going to be in like this bottom half on this bottom left corner or right corner, and then we'll do another orange kind of up here off the top. And there'll be some spacing in between. So to mix an orange color, I'm going to grab my plate and I'm going to put a dollop of yellow. It's a healthy quarter amount. And I'm also going to put a little bit of red. And if you have a weld palette like I do, leave a gap in between so you can use this middle space to mix colors. And I'm just going to grab a large brush of choice. I want something that has a nice flat edge on it though. I'm not going to be painting the orange outlines with this wide brush stroke. I'm actually going to spin the brush in my hand and use this narrow brush stroke for the orange. So I'm going to go ahead and get my brush a little bit wet. I'm going to wipe off the brush on the side of the water cup just so it's wet. I don't want any water droplets coming down, but you can see that it's wet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small dollop of the red and mix it with my yellow to make orange. Now, if you wanted to make another color in between, you can, but I just brought this right in here. A little red will go a long way. You'll learn that pretty quickly the more you paint. So I have a nice juicy orange color here. Now during these classes, if you want to go a little slower than I am, everybody works at different speeds. Just feel free to pause the video at any time and catch up to us whenever you're ready. So no big deal. Okay, so we are going to do a circle, and I want my orange to be rounded in this bottom corner. So for me, I'm going to find, well, where do I want, how big do I want this orange to be? And maybe I find a center point here, and you just kind of start and you just do a circle right around. So this is just the outside rind of my first orange. Okay. You can make this as thick or as thin as you want to. Perfect. And you can kind of reshape this as you go, right? Perfect. And that's pretty big. That's a pretty big orange, right? So I'm just going to leave it right there, and I'm going to do another one up here. And you can say, well, do I want it to be a little bit more further out? Probably. So I'm just going to go like that, bring it out a little further. And I'll paint over this area up here, so that's no big deal. So sometimes it's okay to change your lines. Not a big deal. I might just paint this in a little bit. You don't need to, though, if you don't want to. So that's a little bit of my rinds there. And you can decide how thick you might want these rinds to be. So I'm using the edge of the flat brush just to make these rinds, orange rinds, a little bit bigger. Does not have to be a certain color. And you can be as abstract or as, you know, proper as you wish for this class today. You can see down here it's a little thicker. I can use white paint to kind of trim that up. And up here, I'm just going to make where my rind is, actually, I'm going to make this a little thicker. So we're just kind of setting the stage here for our painting. All right. So for me, I kind of like that's a little thicker up there. So I'm looking at this rind saying, well, I kind of like the way that that looks. So I might make this a little thicker. Let's see. I could keep the interior set for color. So maybe I'll make this a little thicker up here. And I can make this a little thicker. And you can always change how thick or thin these are. For me, I'm going to make this a little thicker. And I'm kind of building upon. One of the things I'm keeping in mind is the white space here. Wherever this white space is, you can see it's fairly limited. I have a lot of white space here. I have some here and I have some here. I'm going to put hot pink all right in here to really make these oranges pop out. For me, I'm going to make this a little thicker right here. So play with your eye. Have some fun here. Don't forget to breathe. This is a good time. All right. And I kind of like what's going on up here. I'm just going to make this one a little more thick. I like the white space, the distance in here. If you have too much white space in here, you can make your rind a little thicker. You can move one of these lines out like I did. Doesn't matter. We can always use white paint to cover up any like extra lines, so don't worry too much about that. So all good. All right, so I'm going to let those dry. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this orange to find where my slices are. So we're going to use our imaginations, and we're going to say, where is the center of the orange? So based on the shape, my orange is like really, really big, right? So the center of my orange is probably in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do pieces of the pie. finding the center of the orange. And I want you to do the white space. I want the white space to be really big, and we're going to find these pieces together. We're going to do pizza pies spaces like this, but the white spaces are really important because this is where we're going to put all that juicy fruit, like all the really fun, funky colors are going to go inside of these pizza pies. And you can play with the white space. So the white space around, you can make as thick or as thin as you want. So you can see I can kind of come up a little bit. We're going to have lots of colors in these pizza pies and these orange slices. But I want you to pay attention to having consistent white padding around these. And everybody's oranges are going to be different sizes. So just take it with a grain of salt, the size of mine. This one might come in a little bit more. I'm going to add lots of colors. So you can see I'm kind of creating this, here we go, as a group here. And then up here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just find where I want to put some of these. And I want just managing those white spaces. You can always add like white back in. If you want it to be like really accurate, you could easily like measure this. So maybe this is a 1/2 inch. You could do a 1/2 inch everywhere if you wanted to. You don't have to. You could just use your eye. And it's going to look a little bit 4th grader-esque right now. Don't worry. It's supposed to. It's going to be really abstract and fun. So just kind of embrace where we're going. All right. So I'm just going to have some fun. I have some of those pieces in. We're going to add lots of colors, so no big deal. I might add in a few kind of funky orange colors just to kind of start some of this abstractness, just to kind of, and I'm still using this big brush. If anybody wants to switch to a smaller brush, you can, but I'm just doing some kind of funky texture in the inside of this pulp. We're going to add lots of colors in here, so you can get a little crazy if you want to. But it's good to get some color down and let it dry. So come in and add a little bit of, just leave some white space, but add some kind of pulp colors in here. And I'm going to look and check, make sure that all my spacing is fairly accurate. Again, all those points to the center pie come here. There's probably another orange slice over here somewhere. So I'm kind of creating the illusion that there's another one over here. So you kind of have to like imagine your whole shape and then kind of fill within. We're not going to go too crazy. We're just getting some of these basic shapes down. We're going to add a lot of other colors. So take a minute to do that. If you need to pause the video, feel free to do so. But I'm going to grab my white and I'm going to start mixing like a hot pink color. And I have my red on my plate and I'm going to put the white kind of in the next, so leaving a gap in between the red and the white. And pink and white, or red and white make pink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm going to let this dry. It's not done, obviously, but we're just doing one step at a time here. All right, cleaning off my brush. I am going to take a dollop of this white and put it here, and I'm going to grab some of the red, and I'm going to make a pink color of choice right in this. And I want it to be fairly vibrant, so I'm going to get a little bit more red. And this pink is going to fill, a lot more red. This pink is going to fill the space in between. Yeah, awesome. So red and white mixed together make pink. And we're going to make like a pinky purple. We're going to have a good old time here. So we're going to have some fun, and we're just going to start to fill in this whole space in between the oranges. And just like let yourself go a little bit. This is being abstract, is just kind of playing with your brush strokes. Maybe holding your brush back a little further. Try not to be so deliberate. This pink can go right up and touch the side of this orange. And you can just play with it. You can be a little messy about it. It doesn't matter. It's kind of fun being a little crazy and a little messy, because that kind of what gives you a little bit of an abstract, rough approach. And this painting definitely has more of like a rough approach. So you can see I'm being like a little aggressive. I'm kind of following the wave of this gap of this background color. So I'm just kind of starting at the top, kind of coming in, making sure it's kind of filled in. We're going to bring in some pinks and pinky purples. This is primarily going to be like pink for me as like a primary background. But if you wanted to have a little fun here, you could make a purple or like a darker pink. I'm going to take a little bit of blue. I'm going to put a little bit more of this pink down here. And then I can bring in like a little bit of like some, if you wanted to bring like in a pinky purple, you could. But we're going to have some fun and we're going to play with this background. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue to this red right here. And it's just going to add a little bit of a purple tint. Ooh, that's really dark, but it's going to be really fun. So if anybody wants to kind of bring in, ooh, that is so dark, but it is kind of fun. So if anybody wants to bring in some of this like darker color, you totally can. I kind of love this actually. You could use a smaller brush. I might dip my brush in a little bit of water. Have fun and be abstract in filling this space. While this darker color is still wet, you can move it around a little bit. This darker color also will be some beautiful contrast for the whole painting. So you don't have to do it if you want to, but I'm here just to give you options as you experiment with our painting today. So again, the pink is my primary, but you can bring in a little bit, and this is purple, red, and it's like pink and blue kind of mixed together. And I like this, maybe a little bit of edging on the rinds. There's also red in the original too. So if you wanted to bring in more reds, you could. But this is you, like use your imagination. I don't want any white to be in this pink space. So if there's any kind of nooks and crannies that are kind of like poking through, just take a minute to kind of rub those in with your brush, blend those right in. I kind of have like a little bit of scratchiness going. This is your painting, so it can be anything you want. So have fun with this background, colors, textures. You do you here. This is a really fun opportunity just to kind of like, you can be a little crazy, and there's a very low risk you're gonna do something bad. That's what we tend to think about in our brains. Like, if I do that though, would it look good? I hear that often in my classes. The nice thing is you can try something, and if you don't like it, you can paint over it. That's the nice thing about these art classes. And I'll kind of coach you through these classes of where it's a little more safe to take risks if you're scared to, but push you a little bit for you to try new things. I'm having fun by bringing in some of these pinks into the rinds just a little bit. It's kind of softening the edges of these rinds. I really like that. If you don't like that, you don't have to. Again, I'm taking a little bit more of an abstract approach today. I'm truly embracing the fun of color. If I wanted to bring in a little bit more purple, let's see what we can play with here. There are a couple of like darker colors kind of swiped in. You can play with what you may want to do for like any other kind of accent details. I'm just having fun with some colors and forms. I'm bringing in a little bit of that. But take your time. And I might be doing a little bit of outlining here. And if you paint something you don't like, just know you can always go back and fix it. So take a minute to play with this. For me, this blue, I don't really like this blue that just hit right here. It's okay, I'm gonna like let it dry and kind of come back to it. So it's okay to do something you don't like. It's all part of the experimentation process. Just let it dry and come back to it after. And if it starts to get mucky and blend with color, don't worry, just leave it and then we can come back. Okay, so I'll give everybody a few minutes to play with that. All right. Okay, so now that we have some of the pink in, we're gonna let that dry and we're gonna go back to doing some fun, funky colors on the interior of these orange slices. So this is where it's like really funky, abstract. There's a lot of different colors going on. The colors that are inside of these orange slices are like yellows, oranges, purples, blues, like lime greens. Lime green would be a really fun touch to this. So what I'm gonna have folks do is we'll start simple and then we'll start mixing some newer colors. So I'm gonna have everybody make sure you have blue on your palette. And I'm gonna have you grab like a medium-sized brush, something that's not too big, not too small. This is a nice flat-headed brush. It has a nice flat point if I needed to, but if I spin it, it has a little bit more of a narrow edge, which is really nice. So I want you to pick a texture. Think of a brush stroke that you want to use for the interior of these oranges. In the inspiration, there's kind of like long brush strokes. They're kind of like long and punchy like this. If you wanted to do a different style than this, you can. But I'm just gonna do some long, funky brush strokes. We're gonna have a lot of different color in here. So I'm just starting the process, okay? There's gonna be a lot of layering with these oranges with a lot of colors. So for me, I'm just starting with blue. I'm gonna let it dry. If you wanna go on the orange, you can. So just be a little daring. Kind of put it all over. Leave some white gaps. Don't go too crazy. Okay? So you can see the color, how they're already kind of coming together just by adding a little bit of that contrast. Really quite pretty, right? Okay. So I'm just, as you're doing these, if you wanted to come in and do a second coat on some of these, you can. It's going to take multiple coats to add lots of paint on here. So don't hesitate just to kind of like go for it. Don't be afraid of putting something in the wrong spot. Just leave space for other, these might look like seeds to some people, I don't know. But acrylic will dry quickly. I'm just making sure these are nice, solid blue color. So I'm just doing a little bit of a second coat, very casually. I'm not doing anything really specific. Okay. But the second coat will really make these jump out, which is good. I love this already. All right, cool. So as you're doing that, take your time. We're gonna like just do a few of these, let it dry, and we're gonna come back to it, okay? So this is gonna be bouncing around from one color to another, and then we'll go back and do touch-ups, okay? So I was consistent with my dabbing and the size, right? They kind of look all uniform. That's good. I'm gonna wash my brush. If you need more time, take more time, but you don't have to be too specific here. And we're gonna do we're gonna make a lime green together. So this is gonna be super fun. You need yellow paint, blue paint, and white paint. So I have a little bit of white paint over here. You can grab your favorite yellow. If you have a bright yellow, like a medium yellow, some of you might have like a mustard yellow. You can choose which one you want to do. If you have a brighter yellow, that's going to get you to like more of a limey green, right? So I might put a small dollop of a yellow on my plate. Right next to my white is fine. And to make green is yellow and blue. So I'm going to use that same medium brush that I used for this texture, cleaning it off in my cup. And I'm going to take a small dollop of blue and mix it right in with my yellow. A little blue will go a long way. And I got a pretty strong lime green immediately, which is kind of cool. So you can control like how yellowy you want this green to be. This is actually pretty spot on. It gave me a nice bright color. If you have a different yellow than this, just make a green that you like a lighter green. So what you're going to need to do is you might need to add white paint to find your right color. Everybody's going to have different colored paints, so it's okay. And I'm going to rinse and repeat. I'm going to do some of this lime green, and this is going to take a couple coats, kind of right within all of this chaos. And I'm going to come up high. And I'm not like painting with like within, I'm doing the same brush strokes. Because we're going to fill inside, there's going to be no white on the interior of these oranges. Now, if you don't like this texturing I'm doing, you can do a different type of texturing. This is just what I'm inspired to do, and I like to be courageous in these classes by just showing you it's okay just to kind of be in the moment and not overthink it. It's very liberating to like not take the art so seriously, and the more you paint, the more you let go. And the process of letting go when you paint is incredibly, it's just invigorating. So this is a really fun inspiration just to like let go of notions you have to do something a certain way. Imagine that. No expectations, just fun. And we all have expectations of ourselves, right? Of doing something a certain way because you want it to look good. But sometimes with art, it's about the process on how you get there. And it may not matter always what it looks like in the end, especially if you're doing it for fun. And the more you let go, the more you'll kind of get to know yourself and your creative abilities. And you practice and you'll start to refine how you do things because you've tried different things. And by trying different things, that where it allows you to grow as a person, allows you to expand your offering, etc. So it's really cool. It's like this fun full circle thing that kind of happens organically just by taking those little risks. And that's why I love to incorporate that in these classes. Lots of fun, I'll call it spotting. All right. So I'm going to let that dry. And maybe I want to put a little bit of pink inside of these, right? So you can kind of go at your own flow. I'm intending to do blue and green. We did that. I intend to do yellow last. I intend to use pink. So you want to make sure you clean your brush in between so you don't mix these colors. So I'm happy with my green. I can come back to it. I can add second coats, but I'm being intentional to not mix them together. I don't want to blend all of these. I want all these colors to kind of stand out on their own. So I'm going to come in with I have a little bit of pink left right here. And I'm going to just tuck a little bit of pink in. Again, my goal is to, maybe I'll use some longer, skinnier brush strokes just to add in. Maybe I'm kind of tucking in a little bit of pink in between some of these colors. So this is all going to evolve in whatever way that you want. You could let this dry entirely. I'm kind of touching some of the other colors and it is getting a little smudgy. So I'm considering to kind of just pause for a minute, but I'm just going to add in a little bit of the pink smudging. And I'm just going to do it kind of in between. And I'm going to do the same texture. I did some longer, skinnier lines and I didn't like it. So I'm just going to go back to doing the regular, and you can see how it looks better, a little bit more natural, that it's all kind of uniformed, that uniformed texture I started with, that single brush stroke, right? Now again, you don't have to do this. The one in the inspiration is a lot more abstract. It's kind of like splotchy a little bit. This is a little bit more uniformed with regards to I'm using the same brush stroke. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can always change your mind too, but the best time to change your mind is once this is dry. If you change your mind now, all of these colors are going to get mucky, and that's a really easy thing to do. So if you see a wet piece of paint, try not to smudge on top of it. I'm like smudging maybe near them, but I'm not like moving my brush near it. I'm just doing a dab and moving away. So I did blue, green, and pink. And they kind of look like seeds a little bit. It's kind of fun. But I'm being thoughtful and intentional of my approach. And when I first started doing the pink, I was doing some lines in the middle of this, and it didn't look quite natural. It's because I changed my texture, and it was smudging the other colors, which was kind of killing it a little bit. So I kind of stopped what I was doing, and I went back to the original plan that I had. So it was a kind of a low risk effort to say, well, what did it look like if I brought in another? And I did a little bit of pink outlining. You could do that if you wanted to. Again, this is totally up to you on what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you want to make this look a little more messy, in the inspiration it's a little more messy, you can do some kind of like pink, kind of like breaking it up a little bit here. You can make it look a little bit like a little rough around these edges, kind of like stirring up some of this white space, kind of making it look a little fuzzy. Just some soft brush strokes. I just have this pink on my brush, but I'll bring it a little closer so you can see what it's doing. It's kind of just roughing up these clean edges for it to look a little bit more abstract, but it's still holding the white. So you can play with that. This is kind of where these oranges are going to evolve, right? And we're going to make them more juicy with yellow and orange as some of our final steps. So right now it might look like very orange and pink and has these dark colors. We're going to be really making it juicy with our yellows and oranges, but I want to get all these other colors in first. So that's the intent here. So I encourage you just to be a little playful. Think about where you might want to. I'm letting the inside of these oranges dry. I am going to be adding yellow and orange, juicy orange colors to these next. For me, as I reflect on mine, I want people to look at this pink area. Do you want to add any other colors to your pink area? Maybe purples, you can decide, to kind of add a little bit of flair or not. You could. There is a little bit of light blue they have tucked in here. I may add a little bit of light blue into the center of these oranges, but our two remaining colors, like a juicy yellow orange and like a very bright yellow, bright white yellow, we're going to be using as our finals. So that will really help to bring the contrast out. So I'll do a couple remaining steps with a light blue, but I want you to be happy with the interior of your oranges. So I'm going to clean my brush as you're working away. Again, feel free to pause the video at any time. And I'll show you what it looks like to add a little bit of a light blue if you're interested. This is me being a little crazy. I'm going to take a scoop of my white and put it right here with my blue. I'm going to make a light blue color. I don't need a ton of this. It's always good just to mix the color first. Ooh, there we go. And you can manage how much paint is on the end of your brush. Kind of wipe off some of the paint. I'm using this medium kind of flat tip brush. It's a fairly small brush, but I like that it has a nice flat tip on it. It's allowing me to be a little playful here. And if I wanted to add in a little bit of, you know, light blue here or there, I could. Just as like a little touch. You want to make sure that, oh, I like the light blue. That's a great addition. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm kind of making sure that all these white nooks and crannies on the inside of these are filled in. I'm not going to do too much light blue. I could get a little crazy and do some splattering. Tempted, very tempted to do a little bit of splattering at the end. Not going to do it yet, but I added a little bit of, just a little touch of light blue in some areas. I'm not going to add too much. I did like this darker outline with purple on the outside of this orange. If you like that, you can do that. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I am going to be adding the juicy orange colors and juicy yellow colors in next. So the dots and texture inside of my oranges is still wet. So anytime you see a little bit of shine, that means it's wet. This is not wet, but there is wetness inside of these. So I'm letting those dry patiently, but I added a little blue as for a little bit of extra flair. I will show you how to make two really fun, juicy orange colors to kind of finish the coloring part of our picture today. Yellow is an important part of that. I'm going to use this mustard color yellow. It's kind of like a golden yellow, not like a mustard, but I guess you could call it a mustard too. I have a little bit of white and I'm going to need an orange. So if you need to make more orange, like I do, you can make more orange. I'm going to do a tiny dot of red with some yellow. And I'm going to use that small brush. You can choose, again, check what brushes you're using. Sometimes we forget to switch brushes when we paint. So I'm here to remind you to check what brushes you're using. Okay. All right, so I'm mixing an orange here. And this orange is fairly dark in color. I want to make it a little lighter, or I want this orange to be a little more yellow. So I have a kind of it's a little bit darker of an orange. I'm just going to add a tiny touch more yellow to it. And I love holding space in these classes to do blending. You learn a lot by blending your own colors. You figure out what colors you like and what colors you don't like. And it will kind of help you and inspire you along the way about bringing in more colors, different shades of a color along the way here. So there's a juicy orange. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to have some fun. I'm going to take a dollop of my orange, kind of put it over here in the middle. I'm going to try to get off as much of that paint as possible. And I'm going to gently kind of scoop some of the yellow out and put it in with that orange. So it becomes a little bit more yellowy. And I call this one of our juicy orange colors. Ooh, yeah. And if you wanted to add a little bit of white to it to lighten it, you can. But we want this to be, and maybe if you need more yellow. Okay, I'm going to swirl this around. There, this is like a nice light orange. This is perfect. And everybody's using different colors. The goal of this orange that we're using now, this lighter orange, is I want it to stand out on the orange rind. So I want this to be lighter than the orange rind. And we're going to use this color Mine is not lighter than the orange rind. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow, add a little bit of white. We want it to stand out, and this is gonna be an accent color to our orange rind. So I'm just adding a little more yellow, and I'm gonna add a touch more white. I want it to stand out just a little bit. There we go. I'm kind of getting a creamsicle orange. That will work just fine. And if you don't like this, you don't have to. Manage how much paint is on your brush. So my brush is pretty goopy with paint. I just wiped some of it off on my plate. And then if you wanted to do any kind of like outlining or texture on this orange, this is a nice lighter color. Mine's like barely showing up, but it's showing up kind of just enough. You can play with how bold you want this contrast to be. And the more bold and contrast, I'm kind of doing some outlining on the rind. This is just having fun with some of the texture. You can use a smaller brush if you want to, but you can see how it's really starting to bring out some lighter tones. Love this. And if you wanted to make it a little lighter, you could. Maybe a little bit more yellow. Have fun and play with these colors. I just added some significantly more white. I'm using the flat side of this brush. You want these lines to be as small as possible, but it's up to you. You don't want to take away all of the orange, so you want to be careful on how much you're adding and where. But if you wanted to bring in some of this juiciness kind of in between, adding some light, this is where you're going to start to pull out some of those contrasting colors. So I'm just kind of doing, I don't want to say outlining work for these elements, but a little bit of this lighter orange, and we'll add in yellow in a minute to kind of highlight your rind. You can see it will just kind of start to jump off the page a little bit. Do a little bit up here. You can kind of look at how these orange slices are shaped and how they kind of show up within your orange. If you wanted to kind of use this lighter orange to kind of reshape some of these slices, you could, right? How much white space is there, how the white space looks, etc. You can play with that. You can have smooth lines, you can have a lot of abstract areas. You can choose. And this is where we just take a minute to play around with spaces. For me, I'm adding a little bit of white up here to kind of reshape a space. You can use white to kind of reshape in between your orange slices. If you don't want to use white, you could use this like lighter orange within your spaces. You can see down here I used a little bit of the orange. That was unintentional. So I'm just going to do the white, but anything can happen here. Play with really just refining your shapes and where your colors are. Take a deep breath, enjoy the process. I love the colors, so much fun. Hopefully you're enjoying this as well. All right, and then we're gonna bring in like some lighter yellows, and we're gonna do some juicy yellows tucked in here, which is gonna be really fun. So I'm gonna clean this brush off. And I'm gonna grab some yellow and some white. I might grab my white and put it right in with my yellow. And if you have a brighter yellow, use a brighter yellow. I have this kind of mustard color, and not mustard, now it's kind of like a light canary yellow, which is kind of perfect because that will really stand out on here. But if you wanted it brighter, you could be it brighter. And this lighter yellow can go in lots of places, so it can kind of go on top. You can do it kind of tucked in. Maybe the top of your orange slices are a little yellow. If your colors are wet, the yellow is going to get mucky with them, so just be mindful of not doing your yellow until other areas may be dry. Maybe I'll just tuck in a little bit of yellow on the outside of this rind up here. Maybe a little bit of yellow on the outside of this rind. Be sure to kind of go all the way off the page, like your orange is continuing kind of on. But the yellow is really going to have a nice contrast to the, if you have any darker colors, it's really going to pop out. So you can be really deliberate about playing with contrast. You could make this even lighter. The more white you add to this yellow, the more it's going to pop. So if you want it to really stand out, like that, you can add a lot more white to it. So if you really want it to be bold, you add a little bit more white to that yellow. And I'm playing with the rind. I want the rind to stand out. Lean back in your chair, reflect on your work. Go back in and get more colors. For me, I'm just going to come in and play with the interior of these orange slices. They don't seem quite done to me, so I'm just coming in with a little bit more of the contrasting blue. This is where you can kind of use your eye and put any finishing touches on that you wish. I might do like a little bit of light blue splatter on the whole thing, just because I'm feeling a little wild and crazy today. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to, because the light blue look really pretty on kind of on the top of the whole thing. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but I might be a little crazy here. All right, but I'm playing with a little bit of the contrasting blue. The contrasting blue is a great complementary color to the oranges and the pinks. So anywhere you want to add any more of this blue, again, be careful that you don't get too mucky in areas. I'm adding a little more contrasting blue in spaces. And you're going to get to a point where like you're going to say, I like this space, Megan, I don't want to do anymore. That's totally fine. Just check yourself, go with your own flow, go with your own intuition. But I'm using the tip of this brush with a little paint, and I'm just tucking in a little bit more navy blue, this cobalt blue along the way. And this might be like a phthalo blue, it might be like a royal blue, whatever you got. I'm just creating a little extra contrast in these orange slices, because that's what I'm feeling today. And you can see it really started to create some new contrast right in that space. Kind of made it, it kind of took it to like a kaleidoscope effect compared to like a confetti effect, because I'm just doing small little brush strokes, kind of tie it together. But you can still see all the other colors. So it's a good learning, a good exercise today of when it's good to let colors dry before you bring other colors within it, right? Because sometimes when you bring colors within colors, they touch each other and they blend and it turns to be a brown or a yucky green, and that's not good. So today was a great exercise just to pause, to let your paints dry. Now I'm sure some of you watching this, your paints got mucky, like mine definitely did in some areas, but we pause, we recognize that, and we let it dry, and we can always paint on top of it, okay? So try not to take that too seriously. All is well. And I want you to paint as much or as little as you want here. I love the brightness. I could even add a little bit more yellow here. I have different colors of oranges. The yellow I used was the mustard orange, or the mustard yellow, or that sunshine yellow. If you happen to have any other brighter yellows at home, it's a great opportunity to use that. We don't typically do this in these classes, but I could literally just take this tube of paint and just like do like little smears of yellow, like they're like little seeds. Getting a little crazy. Using my finger maybe to add some bright yellow. Kind of fun. Don't have to do this. I'm being experimental here. Using my finger just to kind of dab it around a little bit. It's kind of a fun texture. It kind of adds like a fun new texture on top of what I created. So you don't have to do this, but and you could also put it on your finger too. Like this is kind of giving it a little bit of a seed look, which is kind of interesting. I don't hate it. I just did a little dollop and I'm just doing a little dab with my finger. It's kind of fun. You could easily go overboard by adding tons of layers and lots of spaces. So I'm not going to do too much. But that looks kind of funky, right? Especially from far away. I like that pop of color. So this is another cool example of, one, I was not planning on that. Two, I took a risk. And three, it added a second layer of texture and change to this. It kind of brings it to life in a new way. So sometimes abstract artists will use different mediums and different tools to get different textures. And by using my finger and by doing thicker globs of paint to dab and apply this, I got a whole second look that was added to this picture tonight. And just lean back, you don't have to go overkill, but that looks super funky, right? Double texture, kind of fun. A little scary, but you can do it. If you don't want to do it, no worries. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry. I am gonna take another risk because I like living my life on the edge for you all. I'm going to do a light blue splatter across the entire thing. Now I'm in my studio and I have artwork everywhere and this is totally unplanned. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move things away that I can't get ruined because I'm so passionate about this light blue splatter. I'm just so excited about trying it. We're going to do it together. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I'll do it in a controlled way. But go ahead and finish what you're doing first. Okay, so now we're going to do the light blue splatter. It's going to create a light contrast to kind of add a little bit more abstract on top. I'm not going to do a lot of it. I'm just going to do a little bit of it. Before you do that though, I want to make sure that you're happy with everything behind this. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. That's why I like being the guinea pig first. So happy to take these risks, show you some different considerations before. So I want you to be happy with your oranges. I want you to be happy with the coloring and texture. My yellow dots are still wet. It's okay, they can be wet because I'm not going to do anything too nuts here. So I'm going to first mix a light blue. I have one right here. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of more white because I really want it to stand out. So there's a light blue right there, super light. I'm going to take several dollops of water and bring it into this well to create a watery mixture. I call this a water wash. I want a lot of water. The more water, the more liquidy this will be and the more it will splatter. The thicker this is with the less water, the thicker the splatter is going to be. And I do not want a thick splatter. So I'm doing little dollops of water, like 6 dollops of water. You can kind of eyeball this. I want it to be like a milky consistency. And I have this size brush. This is the big brush I send in my kits. If you've ever gotten brush kits from me, this is the biggest one in the pack. It's like a large, flat, kind of rounded tip brush. This is pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more water to it because I don't want it to be too thick. Okay, so I'm just going to mix this around. It's a very light blue. And if you've ever done my classes and we've done like the stars, the galaxy stars, we're going to do that technique. If I had a whole backdrop back here, this could be really wet and I could just whip this at it, which I'm kind of tempted to do. That could also give me the splatter I'm looking for. So here we go. One way of doing the splatter is using your index finger and splattering it on. I might do like a little bit of a whip situation here, which I'm a little nervous for because I haven't done that, but I'm going to try it anyways. So I'm going to splatter it on that way. So super fun. I'm not throwing my brush at the canvas, but I'm kind of turning my angle and giving it some fun splatter. So I think that's super funky and different. If you wanted to try the finger splatter, you can use your index finger and just pull your brush back slightly and you can get some smaller splatter in. This is like the galactic star splatter, but if you want big splatters like me, you can try that. Okay, so fun. So I think the splatter is super cool. We don't do a ton of splatter in my classes, but it kind of just adds another little bit of an edge to the picture. Okay. Perfect. So clean your hands if you got your hands messy. If any of you didn't do that, no worries. The splatter is totally optional. I like it. It gives it a little bit of an edge. We don't do a ton of abstract in our classes, but I thought it was fun to give you all just kind of a fun, different approach to our juicy orange. I hope you all enjoyed this class. Again, feel free to continue to work on this. You can let things dry, make modifications. I may even add a little bit more white in areas, but thank you so much for being with us. Be sure to check our Patreon updates and our YouTube page for more upcoming classes. We have a full access library of videos that you can check out previous classes, as well as consider joining some of our live classes in the future. But thanks again for being here, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers all.